say between Jackson, who says that we can be less capitalistic, or we can have a nice capitalism. So we don't have to break with capitalism, which we agree without breaking with capitalism, we just have to have a different version of it. What's your assumptions for those people?
Should we flatten that one straight, or do you want a couple more coming up?
Shall I come back?
Yeah, flatten it, yeah.
Just, I don't know whether, Karen, you introduce yourself, but just, Karen has been campaigning for all this eco-social stuff before it was called eco-socialism and does brilliant things, and I'm just feeling so guilty that I didn't talk about Alba and Cuba and so on, and your PhD in Cuba and so on. Tim Jackson, I mean, it's awkward for me because he campaigned me, didn't he? I had this curious thing that I got asked when he had the Sustainable Development Commission rethinking growth. I got commissioned to do a paper. I thought this was rather bizarre, being paid money. I've been writing in The Guardian, that's what it is. I'm being paid money to talk about a non-capitalist economy. And I wrote a paper called Prosperity Without Growth, Economics After Capitalism. And then there was a book by Tim Jackson that had the first bit. So, I've said to Tim Jackson, you've got to move beyond capitalism. I think, bless him, I think he's done some good work critiquing growth. I think being very pluralistic about it, what was good about the whole project was he didn't fall into dire Malthusianism, where we've all to be fucking miserable. It's this sort of Aristotelian all-flourishing of the human being. So I think he did some very, very good work, but I think he was limited by the institutional structures. But maybe we should get him to conference and debate with him. But capitalism, it's not efficient. Like I say, you have people from the right who sometimes realise this and change.
I feel like sometimes this issue about capitalism or not capitalism is confused by a misunderstanding, or there's not a clear meaning of what capitalism is, and a lot of people interpret it as, when you say, could we just have a nicer capitalism, sometimes I think what people mean is, could we have a nicer society based around markets? And I think perhaps all of us, when we talk about this, need to be clearer about what makes, when a market becomes capitalist, or how a market cannot be capitalist, because I don't know, maybe there are people that still advocate an entirely centrally planned socialist economy in the kind of Soviet model, but I feel like most people are kind of moving beyond that now. But that's not entirely clear to everybody, and we need to be clearer about what things about the current system make it capitalism, and when it would stop being capitalism, what we would have to change to stop it being capitalism anymore. We need to be clear about that.
Yeah, no, I think that it's probably about time that we got together a very simple narrative like that is much easier to share. I think that probably is, and 500 words and then it's more. It's how we normally do it.
I think I would say about that is that we've had markets for a very long time. We had markets a long time before we ever had capitalism, and I'm sure we'll have markets after capitalism is gone. But with capitalism, I think that we're talking about three key things, one of which Derek has put a lot of emphasis on, which is, he talked about property, but it's basically the commodification of land, and the commodification of labour.
What would an uncommodified land or labour system look like? Because I can accept that means it's capitalism, but it's quite hard to imagine what the opposite would be.
Well, I mean, I could perhaps ask Derek to come in on the Commons, and you talk about exploitation of labour.
I'll just give one example. I mean, I think one of the things that we need to do is basically decommodify labour, and what that essentially means is that capitalism relies on the fact that everybody in this room, unless you're well employed, and if you're employed, you're probably looking for a job anyway, has to go out to work, don't they? There's no option. And that is something that capitalism relies upon.
There's a good fraction of people in this country
who
don't go out to work.
I'll bring you in a minute.
Who not going to work
I'll
is
bring you in.
Can I just finish?
Through the chair.
Yeah, okay,
well, it's that commodification of labour, the fact that people are actually compelled to be in a situation where they have to work for other people to survive. And, if you're all in a kind of situation where we all had a piece of land on which we had enough, enough land to grow our own food, you could say to the capitalist, well, I don't want to come and work in your factory. I'm quite happy being here. Or I might come and work for you 1 day a week. That's no good to a capitalist. They want you there, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week or whatever. They don't want you to have the option not to be there. So one of the key things, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy called qand1, but he wrote, he was a great socialist economist, he wrote a book called The Great Transformation. And when I was talking about, is there, there's some dispute about how long capitalism has been in existence, he actually dated it to an exact date. He said capitalism started on this day. And he actually, I think it was in 1838, from what I can remember. And it's a brilliant book, The Great Transformation, because it's about how capitalism really started and how we moved from a pre-capitalist economy in this country to a capitalist economy. And the conditions that had to be created to make a capitalist country. You couldn't, capitalist economy. It wasn't just evolution. It didn't just evolve from a sort of mercantile economy into a capitalist economy. People actually changed the laws and changed the rules to make it happen. And if we change the rules, we can unravel that.
Okay.
Nigel, Roland, Tameside Green Party. I'd just like to pick up on the current thread about finance capitalism, and we've got to be able to understand that and explain it. The casino economy, where all of the money which is going through all of our institutions, the pension funds, even our councils, are speculating with all of our money on these things that we can't understand, derivatives, hedge funds, etc. Even our currency is like a massive Ponzi scheme, that it just relies on people buying these bonds to keep issuing currency. And when the confidence collapses, then the currencies are going to collapse, and that can happen any time. Just to pick up on the discussion about how the Green Party is perhaps unprepared to, respond to any, collapse or crisis. One of the things I've been trying to do is develop the Green Party political strategy to make it a bit more diverse. Currently, we have all our eggs in one basket, and that is target to
from
win.
a GPRC view.
Yes. Target to win, and the idea is we keep concentrating on one area. Brighton, we get the council, we get an MP, we then concentrate on Norwich, etc. Now, it just relies on so much, but it's going to take so long that way, and it's not making us diverse enough to be able to actually respond to any sudden shift in politics. So I'd like to invite you all along to a fringe that I've got tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock, a political strategy workshop in room 9, and I'm hoping that with people from the left now on the GPEX, like Derek and Howard, that we're going to be able to, yes, sorry, we're going to be able to actually move the political strategy on so that the party can, become wider, than just this small left party trying to get elected with target to win, and broaden our appeal to people who aren't voting at the moment, and to people who may change their allegiance suddenly in the future.
Well, I think our national ERO's figures, which are secret within the party, don't give it to the press, but is we carry on with target to win as we are. In the next 99 years, we'd have got up to something like 454 councillors and very little political influence anywhere in the world. So we need more than that. Yeah. And back.
Hi, I'm Lucy Howard. I'm from Norwich.
you want to stand up and say no
Yeah,
again?
it's probably it's worth standing up because you're sitting here and you can see me. I just kind of wondered, when I think about the end of capitalism, I was thinking about something that Howard said. I kind of imagine it being like a supernova, something that becomes incredibly sort of violent.
And you do think about this often, don't you?
I do. I don't get to sleep much. Yeah, basically, I just kind of wondered, how do you deal, does anyone have any ideas of how we deal with the kind of brutality and the ruthlessness of capitalism versus the kind of humanitarian values that, the Green Party encapsulates, particularly the Green Left?
Armed workers.
I must admit, I do have this conversation with my 3 teenage children.
Right.
Yes. Do we want to take another question before we come back to the... We'll take another few and come back. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Peter Beck, Birmingham Green Party. My mind goes back a couple of years to going to a Green Left meeting and asking a question. I think it's similar to the lady over there, the woman, sorry, the lady. The woman over there who's, has asked about how to end capitalism, or how it's going to end. And my question was, because I was aware of the makeup at the time of the personnel, if you like, of the Green Left. It was, what was the Green Left position with regards to revolution? Given that the Green Party's attitude and means of bringing things to an end is basically a very peaceful way, and I didn't get a straight answer at the time.
Well, can I just say for now, there is no written position in the Green Party or in the Green Left about how one copes. If capitalism starts to collapse over the next 6 months, and there is, problems out in the world where in your community or in your street there's struggles to get food or to keep supplies going, or the electricity's been cut off, or if there's no heating, Transition Town have got kind of some sort of ideas. Locally you do what you can. If there's violence around, you're going to protect people. These are abstract questions, we have to deal with them. There's not a whipped position within the Green Left about whether or not you pick up a club to protect, a small family or an old age home against vandals who are trying to steal the dried milk. There really isn't, and I think it's a distraction, personally. Doug at the back, and then I've got a couple more.
Doug Rooksell, Stafford Stone. 2 things. The idea that Green Left has a position on anything is I mean, the idea where we come to it quite often there is no consensus on anything, and it's more of
yes, there
discussion.
is.
Yes, there is.
The second thing, Derek's talking about polycentrism, working with people outside the party, moving forward to kind of develop more links. It is the kind of article, front page of Conference Watermelon, Sean's article, which originally appeared on the Green Left website. I'd urge people to read that, and there is a link to a much longer version on it with much more links and things on the Green Left website. It's very, very much worth a read. It's a very interesting kind of thing, which kind of deals with not just internal stuff, but external stuff, working with other people, and how we might do that. So I think that's kind of worth reading, worth thinking about, worth discussing in your local party. And also, it's not just an advert for October 20th. The bottom half is what you can do in your local party towards October the 20th, organising public meetings, getting people organised, agitated, coaches, everything for building for October 20th.
Max Rose from Cardiff, Green Party. I objected to the people have to go out to work, people and commodities, and saying that's not true. Because, there are states where a lot of people are just on benefit, and it's almost endemic. Well, it's not completely, but it's large sections, and you have to realise it. There's a whole black economy where people do things under their lives. I mean, I don't know if you want to define it as work, but it's certainly a very strange relationship in terms of work and not paying taxes. So there's a whole drug scene there, and making money on that. Now, is it work? But you can go as far as the mafia economy. In Russia is basically a mafia economy based on oligarchs or putting up, getting lots of money from that. That's not the only capitalism where you have to go out to work. This is a whole change in the economy. Now we've mentioned the casino economy, or the zombie capitalism. That whole thing now is where capitalism is divorced from the actual production, is much more prevalent, and you have to realise that. Third thing in it is the whole international thing. Why has China risen and they are manipulating the big finances now, or the sheikhs in the Middle East? That's all a big. I mean, you can't just talk about capitalism as it used to be within the Western society. So and if you're talking about the collapse of capitalism, those factors are pretty crucial. I mean, they may be undermining it and critically undermining it, but you have to think of those and have your analysis based on that. So, I mean, capitalism no longer just factories and production of goods and so on. There's a lot of it is non-productive. The majority of capitalism production is, if you like, non-productive of goods. We even have a section which is geared to production of luxury living and so on of these people who are cycling off all the all this excess surplus, whatever it is. So it's changed a lot. So I cannot accept an analysis which doesn't look at the zombie capitalism and the mafia capitalism which has been rising.
Well, I would just interject very quickly here to say that I don't think that there's any comments been made tonight that don't understand all of that that's happening in different ways around the whole globe. But we talk about one thing at a time, but it's within that wider context, and it is well understood, especially by my two colleagues that I've got here on the panel. Sean, if you wanted to come in straight and then Sean.
Very, very briefly. I mean, I agree with the last part of what you said, because I said it myself earlier.
Yeah, you did.
That's what I said. But I mean, I don't want to labour this point too much, but again, I recommend anybody to read The Great Transformation by qand1. And he said basically there are three conditions necessary for capitalism: commodification of land, commodification of labour, and commodification of money. Right? If you take any one of those three, think of a three-legged stool, you take any one of those three legs away, it collapses. And he's absolutely right. Marx talked about the reserve army of labour. Of course there were unemployed people, because it suits capitalism to have a pool of unemployed people, because that keeps the rest of us in line. So,
Thanks very much. Sean.
Right, I just want to comment briefly on the last three speakers. Firstly, for what Doug said, do read my article, because I will be asking questions later. The second thing on the issue of labour that was just raised, the thing is that one of the costs to capitalists, the cost of production, is the cost of labour. One of the costs of labour is that it's reproduction. In other words, it's no good, except in very special circumstances, working your labour force to death. And then what the cost of reproduction of labour is varies in time and place, in basically the balance of power. So that 150 years ago, it was possible, for example, to use a labour force including young children. And so now the fact is that the balance of power has shifted, thank God, so that except of course if those young children are in Central Africa, you wouldn't dream of using or Southeast Asia. You wouldn't use children, and so it's the fact that we, for example, have areas of this country where people have been for decades condemned to unemployment seems to me an utter condemnation of the capitalist system. The fact that they haven't been allowed to starve to death is actually as a result of over the last century, the labour movement actually having enough strength to build some sort of degree of organisation to defend itself. but going back to the question, which is it doesn't keep me up that much these days. But then, you know, at my age, very little does. I mean, you know, 10:30 at night, and even if there was a street battle outside, I'd probably want to have a quick lie down. But the thing is that it seems to me, I mean, what's his name? Whose name is completely Joel
Covell.
Joel Covell said in his wonderful book. The thing is, for many, it's easier to. It just strikes my head. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than is the end of capitalism, and that always seems to me a particularly appropriate thing to say in Green Party company. But the other thing is that as it were, if you ask it's not my simile, it's somebody else. I think it was Tony Cliff's about 40 years ago. If you ask a fish what it's like to live in water, he'll say, "What's water? I have no idea." And certainly, if you ask a fish to imagine what it's going to be like not living in water, he's absolutely, what on earth are you talking about? You know, this is quite absurd. And one of the problems that we have is this problem of, as it were, saying what we're talking about is something, in a sense, out of your experience. Indeed, it's out of our experience. And I think we should be honest enough to say, when people say, what would a rational society, what would a democratic society, what would a socialist society be like? So, well, actually, we don't know, because, you know, we can't see that. We're still in the water. We have to actually start to, you know, adapt our gills to live outside it for a bit. And the problem is that water is starting to evaporate very fast. And this is the point that Howard was making. We do live in a closed system. We do live in a finite environment. And despite the fact that I was thinking when Derek mentioned Connolly about, you know, about the stars, they are talking about I don't know if you saw it, they are actually talking about commodifying the stars. For God's sake, and about ownership rights.
That's my red line, though.
You know, Astra Ventura or somebody. This really does show you a system in crisis. Because when faced with this crisis, it seems to me, you know, that this old cliche, you know, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Well, actually, what we've got is the people who are actually running society. Not only are they continuing to dig, they're searching round to find new and efficient forms of shovels, and they are talking to us now to tell us, in future, you're going to have to go into 3-shift working because you're not digging hard enough for us. So it seems to me that in a sense, just sort of obviously standing on the street corner, so the end is nigh doesn't actually get you very far. Even if you're saying, you know, capitalism is on its last legs, that doesn't mean that much more to ordinary people than saying, you know, sort of the wrath of God is imminent or something. But I think what does mean something to ordinary people is the sort of stuff that Will was talking about today. That I mean, just in case any of you haven't read and inwardly digested the article, I said, for the vast majority, the threat of ordinary people, that is, the threat posed by global warming, the need to rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and the plight of indigenous peoples are non-issues floating in the celestial clouds above the reality of low pay, unemployment, a chronic housing shortage, and the most expensive childcare in Europe. If we want the people who can change society, because we can't, it's ordinary people. If we want them to change society, if we want them to listen to us about the nature of the crisis we face, about global warming, the crisis in the ecosphere and stuff, then we have to say, not just be saying sensible things about the housing shortage, about childcare, about unemployment, but we have to be we, the Green Party, have to be demonstrating that we are the firmest and most reliable allies of ordinary people in dealing with those real concrete problems in their daily lives. And that's what Will was saying today, and it's bloody marvellous.